Hi and welcome to the NBA show. My name is Morten Jensen and today we'll be discussing the Indiana Pacers and whether or not they should stand pat at the 2021 NBA trade deadline. Stay tuned. Now I could bury the lead here and go on a major tangent about the Indiana Pacers as a whole, but I'm just gonna answer the original question. I think they should stand pat. I don't necessarily think they're in a situation where it would benefit them to blow everything to bits. Why would they? Domantas Sabonis is doing just fantastic things on the basketball court, averaging over 20 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists per game from the big position. Now, usually I'm pretty down on what you call traditional bigs in the sense that they aren't really that mobile and agile off the dribble, but Sabonis, even though he is very tall and is a little bit mechanical in his movements, it doesn't seem to matter. He just gets things done. He can pass off the bounce, he can pass from the post, he can pass from outside the three-point line. There are so many variations to his passing game that it just doesn't matter. Like, yes, would it be fantastic to have one of those new age power forwards? Sure, and they actually have that in TJ Warren. To be fair, he's just injured, but it doesn't really matter that Sabonis isn't that guy at all. If, and I think this is going to happen, Sabonis is going to develop into a three-point shooter, one with legitimate range and legitimate efficiency down the line. What is his weakness, really? Defense? Okay, you could argue that, but outside of that, there's virtually none. He's a very reliable offensive weapon, and the fact that he gives you that amount of rebounding also helps you defensively because you secure additional possessions. So, yeah, it's not optimal, but it's fine. Also, and this is the key guy I want to talk about today, Myles Turner. They do have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate playing right behind Sabonis, who can clean up a lot of mess should that happen. Now, Turner is one of those players that came into the league with a certain level of expectation put upon him. I am definitely included in the group of people that expected a lot of him because he was a three-point shooter who could play defense and so many things where you kind of looked at his game and went, this is a unicorn big. He can do a lot. This is going to be one of those superstars who's going to put up like 20, 25 points a game. Is a fantastic shooter. Is going to average 2 to 3 blocks per game, a lot of rebounds, etc., etc. That didn't happen. And yes, that is unfortunate, but I'm not going to stand here and argue against Turner as a defender, for example. Like, he has lived up to the defensive reputation and even more, I think. The guy is 6 days away from turning just 25, and he already has over 830 blocks to his name. Now, yes, blocks aren't necessarily a great indicator of defense, but in Turner's case, it is. He's actually playing very solid defense. He's very smart at rotating. He's a tremendous shot blocking presence, which just forces opponents to change shots all around. The fact that Sabonis is in the paint as well, standing 6'11", also helps and aids Turner to some capacity just because you're clogging up the lane. That's all well and good, but Turner is the defensive hub. There's no question about it. It's him, and then there's like a big gap in terms of defensive players on that roster. Yeah, you could argue TJ McConnell and Malcolm Brockton, who are both excellent in their own right, but they are perimeter players. And while they have to switch around a lot, Turner is the guy just taking away layups and dunks near the basket. And even though the NBA has turned into a three-point shooting machine, taking layups away is still priority numero uno. That's just the way it is. Turner has been formidable as the man in the middle defensively. Offensively, however, yes, we have to talk about it, right? And I'm not trying to just be down on him because I think there is a guy in there who has done a remarkable job to the extent that he could. The main thing here with Turner is that the expectations everyone put on him was never really realistic. And I'm definitely one of those people who didn't gauge his game right. I thought he could be a guy who would be more than a 2-dribble player. And that's on me. He was very mechanical in the way that he moved, but I figured, that's not a problem. So many other players were, and they were able to handle the basketball. It's fine. That's just not the case. He was very much robotic and square in his movement patterns, and that just did not change. Which, is fine because he wasn't drafted number 1. You didn't come in with that kind of pressure on you to become this Karl-Anthony Towns on offense. It was the combination of having a jump shot and being 6'11" that I think got most of us really excited about his offensive potential. And this is where I will say that could be on him just a little bit. That's in terms of the 3-point shot. He's actually a good shooter. He just doesn't take enough to really catch himself in the rhythm. I think if Myles Turner was to take 6 to 8 3-point shots per game, maybe even more, he would find a level of comfort that he otherwise has not found from behind the long arc, and he would increase his volume, obviously, but also his efficiency. This could be a guy who, just by upping his volume, redirects his offensive energy into becoming more of a 3-point shooter. I know that most traditional observers would say he's 6'11" and athletic. Why would you not put him near the basket? And I have a pretty good answer for you. In part, he's just not able to dribble into situations. Even centers today, who are very offensively inclined, has to start the offense from about 15 feet out and then go in from there. If you want to get to the basket, you don't really do the traditional post-up anymore. The way that you score is off face-ups, it's off dribble drives. So while Turner isn't really that type of player, I will give him this. This year, almost 34% of his offense has come within 3 feet of the basket, and he's shooting almost 75% on those shots. Now, granted, that's both putbacks, it is guys who've set him up for open dunks. All those things are included in that. But that doesn't really matter. If he can just sustain that, maybe even improve upon it in terms of volume, he won't have to be this dribble driving center like Towns, like Jokic, like Joel Embiid. He won't need to. It's fine to be set up as long as you can defend the rim, you won't take up possessions, and also if you can hit the 3, more power to ya. So what I would like to see from Turner is him developing into one of those Maury Ball type of players. A guy who takes a lot of threes, but also isn't afraid to rim run, get lobs, get putbacks. A guy who essentially says, if I have a shot within 5 feet of the basket, I'm taking it. If I have an open 3 from behind the arc, I'm taking it. Like, Myles Turner is not a high volume shooter. He's averaging barely 10 shot attempts per game over the course of his career. I would like to see that go up by maybe 20%. That may not sound like a whole lot, but in the fabric of who he is as a basketball player, and in the fabric of how that would help the Indiana Pacers offense, I think that would be substantial. Right now, when you're going up against the Pacers, you can sort of game plan against Turner by arguing he won't kill us, offensively speaking. Defensively, you definitely have to game plan for him, and they will, and they do. Every team is concerned about Turner defensively. But offensively, you're just not scared of him. And I think it's time for Turner to give teams a reason to fear him. The shot and the mechanics are there, it's just a matter of finding rhythm. And I think that comes with volume. Additionally, now he's playing in his second year with Malcolm Brockton, basically playing the point guard position. Brockton is a phenomenal passer and playmaker. I think it's time to use that duo just a little bit more. Throw them into a lot of funky pick and roll and pick and pop situations more than they already are. Because right now, a lot of the offense is going through Sabonis, and I would like to see that pair of Brockton and Turner establish a two-man game when Sabonis is either sitting or not playing or whatever. Maybe he has an off night. Then I need those two guys to come together to produce offense at a consistent level. I think the passing from Brockton is good enough to find Turner on slips and cuts, and I think he can definitely play a lot of pick and pop basketball. And the great thing here is that Brockton, after he gets a screen, is bulky enough and efficient enough and smart enough to understand when to keep his dribble alive and go to the cup, or just basically step back and hit a three. He's a phenomenal shooter. The Pacers have struggled lately. They're only 17 and 22. That's not great. But you know what? When I look at that roster, I just see so much potential, and I think it starts with Turner. And I know this sounds like I'm being down on the kid. I'm not. I genuinely appreciate what he does defensively. I think he's a game changer. I'm just looking at his skill set, his capabilities, and I feel that I'm missing those final 20% for him to become a fringe all-star type of player, or at the very least, a guy who unlocks an entirely new layer for the Indiana Pacers offense. Of course, it needs to be said, there are many guys out, and there's been some roster movement in terms of Victor Oladipo getting traded. Obviously you had Jeremy Lamb, who's now back and playing well, but he was out for a considerable amount of time. TJ Warren is out now. It seems they're just never fully healthy. I really await the day when they can trot out a lineup that's fully healthy, where the confidence level of Myles Turner is higher, and where they just play their game. This is a team that we rarely talk about in NBA context, and it's because they don't really stand out that much. They're not a team that makes runs to the finals. They're not a team that's on SportsCenter all the time. They're not a team that you'll find on your NBA.com top 10 list, but they're solid. They have great individual components on that team. It's just a matter of mixing and matching all those components to make it a well-oiled machine in totality. Turner's one piece, Brockton is another, health certainly a third thing, and very, very important. Overall though, I think with the Pacers, even if they aren't going to make the playoffs this year, it's time to look at the NBA trade deadline and see what can we do if we were buyers. And yeah, you might be sitting there, why would they be buyers if they're outside the playoff picture? Why would they? Because they're so good at implementing new talent. You see Doug Mcdermott as well. This was a guy who didn't really find himself in a place where he could get going offensively to the point that he had the talent to do until he came to Indiana. It was the same story with Oladipo when he arrived. He was bouncing around Orlando, Oklahoma City, could never really find his footing in the NBA. First season in Indiana, boom, 23 points per game, and he was fantastic. The Pacers just have this thing about them. They can get so much out of their players if they become buyers here at the NBA trade deadline, and they find a rotation piece or two who isn't necessarily old, but maybe in 25, 27 years of age, something along those lines. And remember, they also have Caris LeVert, who will have to be reintegrated to the team. He's now back. He's played a couple games, but it's going to take a while from him too, so I'm not forgetting about him. But yeah, go out, find a couple guys, 2 or 3, who can really become your long-term role players, because this is a team who are not going to attract a lot of top-tier talent in the free agency market, meaning they have to be aggressive when it comes to trades. They have to be aggressive finding the right guys in the draft, and right now, their roster is so good from just a talent perspective, and I don't think they really have time to play the draft game. I think it's time to go out there, get a couple guys, see what you have. Maybe it doesn't mean a finals run in a couple years, but maybe it means a consistent presence in the second round, and maybe they make an Eastern Conference Finals run. Maybe. But you know what? Considering they're not one of those NBA Finals contenders year in and year out because they're not a free agent destination, I'll take that. That is a really, really good type of team. That would be something that would be highly enjoyable to watch. The Pacers fan base would absolutely love it, and you would field a competitive team every single night. What's not to love? Now, who are those guys that they need to go out and acquire? Great question. I did a video where I actually brought up Doug Mcdermott. That was on my top 5 underrated free agents. You can find that in the description below. I would actually target my number 1 guy in that video, Norman Powell. I get it, he's a shooting guard. You have Caris LeVert. Doesn't really make sense, right? I disagree. I think if you can run out a lineup of Brockton, Norman Powell, Caris LeVert, if you get TJ Warren healthy, you have Sabonis, you have Turner, then you have something. then you have a solid 6-man core and you still have a lot of moving components from there. So I wouldn't be afraid, if I'm the Indiana Pacers, to give up draft picks if the guys that I think could help turn me into a consistent playoff contender, not even a playoff contender, just a solid playoff team year in and year out, I would do it. Now, the fear here, obviously, is that Powell can leave. He only has an $11 million player option. He's not going to pick that up. He's going to try to see what he's worth on the open market. So that would be a gamble. But it's worth mentioning that if they do trade for Powell and they have a really efficient and productive second half of the year, they could try to get the inside track on re-signing him in the offseason. Why wouldn't he be interested? That roster has a lot of talent. They're tremendously professional. The execution level is high. You have a game-changing defender. You have the Nikola Jokic of the East. You have Malcolm Brockton. You have Karis LeVert, who is one of the major X factors on that team. There is TJ Warren, who's going to come back any minute now. Yeah, you would have to give up draft picks to get Powell. You have to match salaries from otherwhere on the roster. Presumably that would mean Mcdermott going out or someone else. We'll figure that out. My point here is, you can make Norman Powell or players of his ilk fall in love with you. Now's the time to go all in, even if they won't make it far this year. That's fine. Look ahead. This is a team, I think, that could surprise the ever-living hell out of everyone just a year from now, if they build and add to what they already have. But it also starts with internal development, and I'm looking at Myles Turner. It's time.